Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gangana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Hello, welcome. Pay very close attention to these teachings. They are from a work of Adi Shankaracharya, Viveka Chudamani, and it is Advaita Vedanta. So these are the teachings that you find in the scriptures. They are according to the scriptures. So pay very attention to these teachings. Listen very carefully to these teachings. Then you should reflect upon them, reflecting a lot upon these teachings, and then meditate upon these teachings so that they may bear fruit in your heart. Moving on to verse 270. First, give up following the world, then following the body, and then following the scriptures. And in that way, do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. So even which that follows the scriptures is the non-self. But here is what happens. So there's this tendency when there's tamas in the mind that the seeker wants to jump to sattva directly. So without giving up the world and without giving up the following the body, they give up the following the scriptures, the spiritual precepts, meditation, spiritual practices. They want to let it go because it increases this and it confirms this separation. So if I'm following these precepts, if I'm meditating, I'm affirming separation. But doing this without first stop following the world and then stop following the body, this is useless. This reduces to a worldly life. So firstly, give up following the world, trying to satisfy, gratify desires, to mingle yourself with worldly happenings. Stop following the world. Then, and that means others and well, I think following the world sums it up all. Then stop following the body. So body has its urges, its needs that impels you to invest in that world. So the impulses of the body, the needs of the body takes you to the world. But when you are distracted in the world, it's more difficult. So first you cut that. Then you come to the body. First, you cut that part, stop following the world, and you stay there, working on that, long enough until that is not a problem. When all fears have vanished, then you stop following the body. You have conquered a certain degree of stillness. Now you work on this inner stillness. And stop following the demands of the body. And when you reach this, after a period of time where there's no more problems about that, you have reached a high level, Then you can stop following the scriptures, because there's no more actions anymore needed. Just tune, just remaining tuned undisturbedly. And remove in that way your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. As long as you have the desire of following the world, the ceremonies of the scriptures, or to satisfy your body, you cannot have true knowledge. Because doing so, you are giving importance to the structures of the world, to the body. You are conferring it reality. You're affirming your belief that it is real. So how can you have true knowledge? How can you be sober if you're continuously drunk? The sages who have known the truth tell us that these three desires are the strong iron chains that keep one bound into this world. So he who wants to get out of this prison of the world must get rid of this. And remember, see this, it's all about stillness. Stop following the world. Stop moving around, giving it importance. Stay quiet. Stop following the impulses of the body. Stay quiet and tune. When the odor of sandalwood comes, it does away with all bad odors. So when the desire for the real is established, all other desires go away. So, because the only desire is going back home to your nature, to the source. And that source is bliss, is Ananda. So, all desires, they are entertained because there's this promise of happiness by their satisfaction. So, it is Ananda always that you're looking for, but in a confused state. So, as you end confusion, clarity remains. And that desire for the self makes all others disappear. But that sandalwood fragrance comes not without friction in the water. So all the desires that are within have kept the desire for the real covered with dirt and dust. When you have cultivated that desire for the self, which is hidden in you, it comes up like the odor of sandalwood. The net of desires for the non-self has kept back the desire for the real self. So by desiring constantly the real, the desire for the unreal goes, and the real shines in its own glory. The real Atman shines in its own glory, because it is desire. Desire is the vehicle to illusion. It is the fuel that sustains illusion. It creates it, intensifies it. You're investing in it. So desire is also the fuel for liberation. The right desire, the desire for liberation. Whenever the mind is bound, there give up external desire. And when you have given up all external desires, then comes the realization of the Atman, free from all impediments. So these desires are impediments because they drive you to invest in the non-real, to embrace the non-real. So as they are given up, then the real can be realized, because there is stillness, is free from impediments, no more pullings towards the non-real. Removal of superimposition. How? Only by staying always in the Atman. The mind of the yogi dies and desires cease to exist, not all at once. So this constant tuning, okay, I will not use the word samadhi yet, because I think it will come, so let's keep this simple. By staying always in the Atman, the rest which is not real has no sustenance, has no food, so it starts to dissolve, but not all at the same time. The more superficial, the more fragile will go first. But the strong, deep-rooted desires, deep-rooted impressions, that takes longer tuning with the Atman. So by constantly staying in the Atman, it's like you're frying all these impressions, and the mind, which is the sum of all these impressions, it dies, it disappears. By increasing the sattva and rajas qualities kills the tamas. So you cannot move from tamas to sattva directly. You have to transform tamas into rajas and then to sattva. And by increasing sattva kills rajas. When that sattva is purified, it dies of itself. It disappears. It's not dead. It is pure. It means it has no tamas, no rajas. So it's like it disappears, or it's not an impediment for the shining of the Atman. What shall become of my body? Asked the seeker, worried. What will happen to this body? Well, usually what I say is, if that is a problem, well, it needs to be transcended. So the fear of that has to be conquered. But here there's assurance, and it's true. So that this gives more time to the seeker. But fear has to be overcome in the same. So what will become of my body? Do not be afraid in this way. Your works done in the past, your prarabdha karma, will sustain your body. Be sure of this and be steady, be patient, and carefully do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. So the prarabdha is that karma, a part of your karma that was responsible for the creation of that body and this life that you're experiencing. So this karma will take care of the body. This life takes care of itself. So you don't need to worry about that. You just have to focus in the self. The rest takes care of itself. And this prarabdha karma, it's just karma. It has no good or right. And just because you have enlightened yourself, that you know who you really are, it changes nothing in relation to the body and its journey because of this prarabdha karma. Whatever is there to be lived will be lived. Story doesn't change. Only what changes is the owner of the story disappears. Only the eternal shines. Think. I am not the jiva. I am the supreme soul, deathless and birthless. Only through desire you have got this body. Think of this and carefully do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. So don't think in terms of individual consciousness. I am not the jiva. The jiva is being aware of divine nature, but recognizing its incarnation, its existence as non-self. So think of your own identity as I am the supreme always. Deathless and birthless. I don't take birth, nor I die. Practice according to the scriptures, reason, and one's realization of the self by these three means. Know thy own self as the self of all, and that way do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. So practice according to the scriptures, by discrimination, reason, using reason to discriminate, and renunciation. The wise man has not the least concern with getting or spending. Therefore, strive to destroy this illusion through constant and single-minded devotion to Brahman, unflinching attention to Brahman. Keep it there. Don't waste time with these afflictions. Because the wise man knows something that you don't. So trust that. Knowledge that arises from the great utterance, thou art that, is oneness with the self, the Supreme. Knowing that for certain and firmly establishing yourself in the Supreme, do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. So the knowledge that arises from this great utterance, thou art that, is oneness with the self, with the Supreme. So, but this the great utterance must all these utterances and contemplation and vision always have to overcome, it's not overcome, is to override everything else. So the utterance, I am that, or I am Brahman, or in this case, thou art that, this great utterance has to override everything else. Only this has to remain in your consciousness. As long as the knowledge of the self remains in the body, very carefully do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. Okay, so as long as the knowledge of the self remains in the body, as long as you are deluded, confusing the self with the body, very carefully, step by step, do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self by discriminating the non-self and renouncing it. As long as this world and the jiva appear even as a dream to you, go on with the practice and carefully do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. So if there's still a world for you, even if it is a dreams-like, still continue the practices, because realization of the self-world disappears. So as long as it is there, keep the practice, keep the tuning. In sleep, in talking with others, in hearing music, etc., one is apt to forget the thought of oneness with the Atman. So all these sense impressions, all these minglings in these activities, they are distracting, and you will forget the thought of oneness with the Atman because you're distracted. You're listening sounds, your attention moves towards them, and you forget that oneness, that thought of oneness. Give them up, these distractions. Don't give them any opportunity, but carefully do away with your ignorance of identifying the self with the non-self. So not giving up these things, that thought of oneness is impossible. It may happen once in a while when you stop your activities, oh, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman. But then you forget about it, because this thought has to be a continuous state, unflinching, unbroken, continuous. Think of the soul in the soul. Think of the soul in the soul, not in the body or mind. This body, which has sprung from the dirt of father and mother, give it up as something filthy. Be established in the real self. Be and become Brahman. Be perfect. So there's this idea that the soul is in the body and the mind. So you think of your soul, that speck of consciousness of identity, in the infinite soul, in the one soul, in Brahman, like you would think of a drop of water inside the ocean. As the space in the picture can be made one with the space outside, so this Atman which is in this body, make one with that supreme, and becoming one, undivided whole, be quiet. If you become whole, you will have to be quiet because there's nowhere else to go. It is totality, it is wholeness. So there's no space beyond that. So this is why, be quiet. It's a meaning. More can be given. Self-effulgent, the basis of all, become that and give up this universe, both microcosm and macrocosm, as insignificant. Again, the body, the microcosm, and the universe, the macrocosm, give up both, always tuning up with that self-effulgent nature of your real self. Treat those both, microcosm, macrocosm, as insignificant. In the consciousness that is ever blissful, put your consciousness that is in this body. Give up this gross and subtle body and be one universal whole. Again, that small consciousness that you see as individual, put it on the eternal consciousness. Rise it to that level, keep it there. And give up this subtle body and be one universal whole. The Atman, the mirror in which this world is reflected, know that as thy own self and be perfect. So see this world as just a reflection, a mirage that appears on a background. See that background as the eternal self, your real identity, and establish yourself in it. That is reality itself. That is your own real self. That is pure consciousness, one without a second. Blissfulness itself, without form and without actions. Take that and give up this unreal body as the actor gives up his dress after the play. So treat this body, gross, subtle, like a piece of cloth, piece of clothes that you take off when you don't need them and you just throw it away. All that you see, and the seeing and that which sees, is unreal, changing every minute. It cannot be that. I am an unchangeable something. I know that I am the knower of all these things, of all these changes. There is this awareness in me that I am the knower of everything. These things, the ego sense and other perceptions, cannot know anything, because I am the knower of them all. So they are not me, not real. So the real self is the witness of I. Even in deep sleep, in the absence of all knowledge, therefore it is eternal. The scripture says it is never born and it's never existent. That is your real self, which is different from the manifested or the unmanifested. He who is the knower of all changes never undergoes any change. He is beyond them, untouched. We have seen over and over again the unreality of these things in imagination, dream, and susupti. So, in imagination, the snake in the rope. In dream, how it appears and disappears. And in susupti, where all these things disappear. Therefore, give up the sense of I in this heap of flesh and bones, and in that which thinks I am the intellect, the ego, and knowing that one undivided consciousness that is beyond time and space, as your own self, gain peace. Because lack of peace is presence of ego. Absence of ego is peace, real nature. Again, give up the sense of I in your family and lineage, in your name and in your form. All these rest in this rotten corpse. And the sense of I in the subtle body, the idea of doer and enjoyer, that also give it up and become one universal whole blissfulness itself. So, name and form comes from the family and lineage. They made this body. It came from them. So, give up this. And also the sense of I in the subtle body. There are so many distractions for the individual. Again, this, just coming back here, I just remembered something. This giving up the sense of I in your family and lineage. This is, and renunciants, they die to the world. They die to the world and to that part of the world also, including their family members, their ancestors, all of this, they die to everything. So just a note. There are so many distractions for the individual, which are the cause of worldliness, but of them all, the first and the root is egoism. It is the seed, and from here, all else sprouts. So long as one has any connection with that wicked ego, there is not any possibility of liberation. As the moon, free from the dragon, shines in her own glory, so one being free from this ego attains his real self. That which exists in this body, identifying itself with intellect, appears as I am. And with the complete destruction of that, shines the real self, free from all distractions. Blissfulness is like a jewel on the head. This jewel of blissfulness is protected by this great serpent of ego, with his 3 heads of the qualities, the gunas. One must cut off these 3 heads by the great sword of discrimination. That discrimination that is described in the scriptures about what's real and non-real. And not only that, these 3 heads will come out again, because it is superimposed and it is active, it is alive. It continues to try to superimpose over you. Such is the nature of this serpent. So you must root that serpent out. Then you can get possession of that gem. Only the steady and thoughtful can take possession of it. That one, the steady and the thoughtful, that which he who places his thought continuously on Brahman in a steady way, unflinchingly. As long as there is a tinge of poison in the body, how can you expect any ease or comfort? So as long as there is any tinge of ego in the body, you cannot rest, because if you rest, you fall again. So when you have done away with this ego completely and destroyed the different kinds of distraction that arise from this ego, well, when you destroy it, those tend to fall with it. Then by discrimination of I am that, you can attain the truth. You already cut the ropes that bind you to the ground, so now you can fly. Therefore, give up by force this ego. Therefore, give up by force this ego. The idea of I am the doer and enjoyer, which is the cause of all these bondages and troubles. Evil, error, this world, death, birth, and old age, all these you have got by identifying yourself with this ego. It comes as a package, though in reality you are the blissful, pure consciousness. You are blissful itself, ever conscious, always uniform, the conscious Lord of all, ever glorious. For him, how can there be any change or error, except by identifying with ego, which is the cause of this world? This ego, this enemy of the self, concealed like a thorn in the throat. Take it out with the instrument of discrimination and enjoy the blissfulness of your own kingdom to your heart's content. So imagine taking a hidden thorn in your throat. That's not going to be an easy, because it's not in sight, and well, you cannot access your throat in a very easy way. Well, that's just an example. So when this great ego has been cut down to its root, if it is attended to, even for a moment, it revives again and causes hundreds of distractions. As the clouds in the rainy season, dispersed after a short time, again collect. So this happens in many levels. That, for example, you have overcome a negative habit, and then you think, oh, it's okay, just once, there won't be a problem. And then it gains force again. So with the ego, it's the same thing. There's just a little bit left, and you attend it, considering harmless, then it can come back again with all its strength. Therefore, after subduing this enemy of the ego, you should not give it any respite at all by thinking of objects of senses, because that is the cause of its revival, as water is the cause of the revival of the lemon tree. The lemon tree is a wild tree, so it is very resistant. So even if it appears to be dead, if water comes to it, it comes back alive again. So after you conquer the ego, don't give it space. Because giving space, if you give it space once, you are making a choice. Because to address it, you must break your concentration, your continuous focus in Brahman, in the self. And that may make it come back again intensely. He that remains in the body, as we are now, full of desires, how can he be purified of all desires? Therefore, without seeking after pleasures of the senses, one must give that up. The seeking after pleasure arises from the sense of separation from the self, because it is seeking after the bliss, which is the nature of the real self. So, without renouncing sense pleasures, you will not be purified.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.